Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily update for February 15th, 2021. There's a famous statement from British Lord Palmerston, the foreign minister for many years under Queen Victoria's reign, and he made the comment, "We have no permanent friends, only permanent interests." This defined the foreign policy of the British Empire from the time of the 6 Years' War or 7 Years' War in 1756 up to the present day. It has never changed. The Brits very often play a role of supporting two different sides so that they're hedged depending on events that are outside of their control. But their ability to control things means they have to be credible on both sides. Now we're seeing this emerge in the two-faced policies of Boris Johnson. You may remember that when the Brexit vote took place, it was an extremely important break with the European Union policy, the anti-sovereignty policy of the European Union. And many in the United States hailed this as a potential for a new alliance between the United States and Britain under Donald Trump and then later under Boris Johnson, that the two countries could forge an alliance of sovereign nations. Well, what we're seeing from the last couple of days is that this was a phony view, that it was wishful thinking, that Boris Johnson is just another political leader of the United Kingdom who owes his allegiance not to the people of England, but to the City of London, to the British intelligence networks, and to the monarchy, which are committed to a continuation of the policies of an empire. And the term for this today is global Britain. Now, the idea that Johnson represented a Trumpian conception of a new order on sovereignty was completely blown away by developments in the last weeks, and I'm going to go through this. But what we're seeing with global Britain is a reset of the role of the British Empire in a world of globalization and the new economy. And the Brits are playing an extremely important role in the Great Reset. In fact, while many people look at Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum as the person making the policy, Schwab defers to Prince Charles, the leading environmental lunatic of the British royal family, and one of the key movers in the global financial compact, which supports the Green New Deal, is none other than Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England. This was made clear in an article in the Financial Times a couple weeks ago, which said that Brexit was never a, quote, little England pipe dream, but a platform for a new global Britain. Now, we see this in the preparation that Johnson is making for an upcoming G7 meeting that's scheduled for later this spring, and for the COP20 conference that takes place in Glasgow in November. At the G7 meeting, Johnson will invite South Korea, India, and Australia as part of what he calls a joint enterprise with Joe Biden to create a D10, that is a democracy 10, replace the G7 with a D10 of, quote, leading democracies. This has nothing to do with promoting democracy. It has everything to do with building a wall of containment and isolation against Russia and China as part of a regime change policy against those two countries and their leaders. And the push for the Green New Deal, which will take place at the COP20 conference coming up, or COP26, was made clear when Boris Johnson made the statement that he will use the summit to demonstrate that, quote, global Britain is a liberal, outwardly looking force for good, unquote. Liberal as in neoliberal. The policy of the Green New Deal, as we've reported, is an anti-population policy. It's an attack not on the problems of solar radiation and the effects of climate change coming from the physical universe far beyond the power of man's machines to cause. No, it's an attempt to reduce the human population by reducing the availability to the power and electricity needed to expand the human population. That's what it's been from the beginning, a lowering of energy flux density so that we will not be able to sustain a population of 7 billion. And more likely, the push from some of the leaders of this are to reduce the population to 1 or 2 billion. Now, what Johnson is saying today, after having portrayed himself as a friend of Trump, an ally of Trump, and this, of course, was when the immediate break with Brexit, the final break with the European Union, meant that the British city of London was seeking a free trade deal with the United States. Then Bojo was great friends with Trump, spoke warmly of the sovereign commitment of both countries. But now what's he saying? He's saying that he wants to lead with Joe Biden the drive toward global net zero. In other words, shutting down all fossil fuel and energy and production, economic production, that has a, quote, carbon footprint, unquote. Now, at the same time, he's continuing the push for more free trade, which was exactly the opposite of what Trump was doing and what Johnson was talking about several months ago. Now, remember, the City of London and British intelligence wanted Trump out. They took a leading role in getting rid of him with the Christopher Steele report, with MI6 involvement in this. In December 2018, the City of London put out a report, 2019, I think, on the special relationship, saying that if Trump is reelected, the special relationship will end. It would not survive his reelection. And what's the special relationship? The British working with Wall Street to impose a global financial dictatorship that would be backed up by the muscle of the U.S. military. The idea of Donald Trump forming an alliance with Russia and China, whether it's to fight terrorism, whether it's to have better trade policies, this was an existential threat to the financial system, which was already tottering, and which the leading City of London figures concluded needed to go into a great reset. Now, Lyndon LaRouche has always pointed out that the Brits always have two policies. That is, they have one for the reality at present, but they always have an option to move in a radically different direction. Just take an example of Brexit. While the people of Great Britain voted to get out of the European Union, the City of London was negotiating backroom deals to allow leading British banks and clearinghouses to continue to run European Union derivative trading, the trading of these phony financial instruments that are backed by absolutely nothing. So we have the interview on the 14th of February on Face the Nation with Boris Johnson. And he was just fulsome in his praise of Joe Biden. He said, and these are quotes, "I'm very delighted to have a good relationship with the White House." He said he's had good conversations, fantastic conversations with Biden. He added, "The UK-US thinking has been coming together on important issues, such as climate change, on NATO, on Iran, but especially on collaboration on climate change." He said also the UK backs completely the Biden policy of aggressive action to contain China, as exemplified by the D10 concept, and the fact that the British are sending some military vessels into the South China Sea as part of an Indo-Pacific strategy of containment. Now, our report, the EIR just put out a new report with the LaRouche organization on what is the Great Reset. This is must reading for anybody to understand what's going on with the Biden administration and what's the policy of the British Empire. This population reduction policy, an attack on physical economy. And it's clear that Russia and China are targeted, as Trump was targeted, because if you have an alliance of sovereign nations as powerful as the US, Russia, and China, the Great Reset won't work. To have the Great Reset function requires a submission of nations to the global cartels, especially the financial cartels, through the central banks to control credit and currency, and not only that, but to control spending. So our report on the Great Reset spells it all out, including the true history of Prince Charles and his role over the last 40 years of pulling together this policy. What's necessary now is to build a force in the United States which understands exactly the danger that this represents and could pull the United States out of this alliance under the British Empire, in which we provide the muscle for the British policy, and instead join with other sovereign nations for an era of peaceful cooperation and development that means new levels of energy flux density with technologies such as nuclear fusion, plasma technologies, and so on. That goes directly against the Great Reset and the Green New Deal, and that's where we have to go. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll be back again tomorrow.